You can build a synthetic brain for a robot using synthetic neurons, and logic arises from the physical properties of the system. This is the only form of AI that I think might get us toward something like sentience, maybe even consciousness. For now, we're finding that yes, these systems can identify complex information, including visual, sound, and even emotions. This is essentially reverse engineering the processes from which thought arise, except using them to process information. As electricity moved through memristors, that is a transistor that acts like a neuron because it remembers the electricity that passes through it. It can be changed by signal, and that can ideally be reversed and take on multiple states. This can be used in order to create logic. It's not an exact copy of a neuron in a biological sense, but it does behave similarly, although some researchers have made synthetic neurons that are capable of interfacing with their own and responding to neurotransmitters like dopamine and epinephrine. This works pretty similarly to how we can get information from an EEG, so the electrical patterns in our brains can then be deciphered into something with meaning, and this is how you can read somebody's mind. Yes, that is possible. When we're talking about our little robo-brains, our physical reservoirs, we are talking about some extremely refined information, the ability to process stuff like emotion based on expression. We're talking about auditory, we're talking about visual. Yes, this is all possible. But that is only a step away from the robot processing this information and using it to take actions. I was pretty surprised to find out that implementing these into agents is not all that new. DARPA had papers on it from 2010. Just because you have a system of memristors that can process information, that does not mean you have something that has agency, but you can combine these with agentic systems. This is, by the way, astonishingly early for this field. This is cutting edge now. I haven't found any information on how this particular project advanced, but the field is still advancing. Because if you can process information with a physical reservoir, that can then be used to interact with the world. Yes, it can be combined with other forms of AI, like spiking neural networks, which is actually, frankly, ideal because it already is processing the kind of information that we're getting from a physical reservoir. I do not know how to explain to people how exciting this is. Everything that is spooky about LLMs is, in my opinion, mimicry. And yes, you do not need consciousness or sentience in order to be a problem, and LLMs have proven themselves to be a problem. Things like physical reservoirs, and even to a degree spiking neural networks, they are taking these same processes, the same physical properties that give rise to sentience and consciousness in us, and trying to recreate them. This field is so nascent. We have only begun to scratch the surface on what this can do. If we are to create a machine that has an experience, I think this is the direction that we'll need to go to get there. Now, I should tell you the reason that humanity is pursuing this, beyond every cautionary tale we've ever seen in science fiction, it's because it does work. This kind of system uses far less energy. I mean, we're talking about building a data center for OpenAI that uses as much power as the entirety of India right now, and India will probably use a lot more power as they build more data centers. We are talking about rebuilding the global energy grid around artificial intelligence, and yes, it is more than just your chatbot. People are implementing it into every area of our lives, and hypothetically, it could smooth out our decision-making throughout the day. Right now, it's causing a lot of problems. This is something that could ultimately give rise to actual thought, because if we have a brain, and if our brain arises from the physical properties of what it's made of, then that can be replicated. And if we replicate it, perhaps we could make something that is conscious. If we get there, and I do think it's possible, I think that this is something that could be done whether or not we ever accomplish it, this is something that could demonstrate to everyone where consciousness arises from. This is the direction that I am really excited about when it comes to this field, the long-term goals of what implications this sort of technology could have for humanity. The question I would like to ask you, hypothetically, if somebody came out with a robot tomorrow with a brain that was so similar to our own that the electrical patterns were indistinguishable from our own, could you accept that it was having an experience? Or would you say no simply because those neurons were manufactured? At what point would you be willing to accept an experience? I think for a lot of people, the answer would be no. Nothing that is not born is conscious.